Greetings, faithful viewers, and welcome to the YungJunko Halloween Clearance Special, where I'm going to talk to you about video games. Do not be alarmed by my now horrific appearance. Please relax and maybe unwrap yourself a Wazoo bar, the hottest hit candy from 2007 to 2007. I think I'll have one now. Delicious.
It doesn't matter that every Wazoo bar left on the planet is probably rotten and hard as rock. Nothing is more horrific than the fear of missing out. There are so many great games to play during the Halloween season that you'll just never get around to. Personally, around this time of year, I like playing through games that might have sci-fi or horror imagery, but with a more lighthearted comedic tone. Things like Dead Rising, Destroy All Humans, and Luigi's Mansion are primed for me in October, and offer a nice change of pace from games that are a little more stressful. But whether it's horror or horror comedy, I'm usually in. The PSP itself is a perfect portable for the Halloween season. You got games all over the spook spectrum. Of course, there's lighter titles like Medieval Resurrection, a goofy fun remake of the PS1 classic, but the PSP also offers plenty of Silent Hill titles, for example, if you're looking for something that's more of a straight horror. When it comes to the PSP's library, though, two games always stuck out to me, and that's Death Jr. and Deadhead Fred. A duo of horror comedy games that generated a little buzz here and there around the release, but have since fallen hard into obscurity. Just going off the covers alone, they always seemed to immediately pop out to me as games that would have a fun horror tone. They always seemed right up my alley.
So without further ado, let's take a look at these two games. I'm now increasing the fog, faithful viewer. Ooh.
Junior.
There was a time shortly before the PSP's launch that the character Death Jr. sort of became this unofficial mascot for the upcoming handheld, because this little game has the honor of being the first PSP game that was revealed to the public. I mean, imagine getting a glimpse of a handheld game in 2004 that looks like it could be a PlayStation 2 title. And man, there was a pretty sizable pocket of hype behind this little guy. Death Jr. was supposed to be big. Not only was it poised to be the PSP's killer app, but there were talks about a whole multimedia franchise for this little bone boy. Comics, toys, and over a year before the game was even released, there were talks of a Death Jr. movie. That was supposed to be directed by the same people who brought us Cats and Dogs and, Son of the Mask. Maybe some things are better off dead. So what happened? Why did this cute little killer not become the killer app? Well, just looking at the cover alone, I bet your mind immediately is running wild with ideas of what this game might be like. You're probably envisioning a Tim Burton-esque dark horror comedy with some quirky characters and a fun little adventure, right? Your mind is probably thinking things like Frankenweenie and Billy and Mandy and maybe even a little dash of Psychonauts. Those are pretty heavy expectations, I will admit, but sadly the game kind of falls short living up to that initial appeal. Here you play as the titular character Death Jr., also known as DJ, son of the Grim Reaper, so he's got a big cloak to fill. You embark on a field trip to a museum with your class of other misfits and supernatural folk while you're all trying to finish your group book report project. You got Smith and Wesson, the conjoined twins, you got a test tube baby, a dead fish. Oh, and there's also your best friend slash crush, a girl named Pandora. On the field trip, they come across a box.
Oh, I sure do hope this development does not lead to horrors beyond human comprehension. Oh, who could have foreseen such horrifying consequences? Why?
Actually, it's DJ who ends up opening the box to impress Pandora, thus unleashing demonic entities all over town and trapping your friends' souls in stasis. This is all your fault, so it's up to DJ, his scythe, and his two trusty emergency glass case Glocks in this little mini character action game. The museum acts as a hub world with each level acting as a way to save one of your friends as you teleport to some random location to mow down a horde of demons. Surprisingly, like 90% of what you're doing in this game is endlessly shooting waves of enemies with some light platforming thrown in. It kind of feels like a missed opportunity because there is a lot of potential to the platforming here, especially with DJ's design. Like, you use your scythe to slide down wires and swing on shit, and you can even scythe hop to give you an extra boost. But these moments are actually pretty sparse. This is less cute 3D platformer and more of a shooter. Think less Jak and Daxter 1 and more Ratchet and Clank. All the shooting is done with a lock-on system, most likely to get around the whole analog nipple nub design of the PSP, and it does work pretty well. And as you advance, you unlock stronger weapons to add to your little weapon wheel, like a freeze ray, a flamethrower, a rocket launcher, that do improve the variety in the gameplay for sure. You reap souls from enemies to break down these big, meaty, flesh door eye abominations to advance through levels, and you can also build this sort of get-out-of-jail-free card, which wipes out every enemy on screen. And this thing came really in handy in a lot of the more hectic stages. The thing is, real quickly, Death Jr. gets exhaustingly repetitive. Even with some weapon upgrades sewn in and some platforming, this is kind of a mind-numbing game. You can really beat this game in like 3 or 4 hours, and even then, it kind of becomes a slug. There's a sort of Doom 2016 feel to this frantic frenzy of unleashing everything in your weapon wheel to combat these endless hordes, but there's just nothing beyond that, and I'm sorry to say it. The new locations don't really add much to the gameplay, and that rich world, those quirky characters they introduced, the game doesn't really explore any of that. It's almost heartbreaking. Look at this. So all your friends are trapped in stasis, right? And in the hub world, you gotta go through a portal by one of your buddies to start the level. You collect every trap piece of their soul and they're free. Early on, I totally thought each level was you going into the manifestation of their psyche. You know, sort of like Psychonauts, where you maybe get to learn about each character, their backstory, their traumas, anything. Like the level where you save your dead fish friend, Dead Guppy. In his levels, you go to a meat freezer in a place called Meat World, and my immediate thought was, oh, this must be where we learn about Dead Guppy and his tragic backstory about how his parents got packaged into a Shell City fish market. We're gonna learn more about Dead Guppy! But no, what's actually happening is each level is you teleporting to random locations in Death Jr.'s hometown. Okay, fine. Maybe this can be an opportunity to explore the world of Death Jr. Maybe it's unique, maybe there's something to it, but no, these are just random empty locations with no people, very few gags, and really lacking in any character, any real details that give insight on what makes this world unique, what makes it ripe for this big multimedia franchise they were planning. Oh, also, here's what pisses me off. So after you beat a level and free your friends, they hang around in the hub world so you can potentially interact with them, but you still get nothing out of this. Like here, I saved one of my friends, Stigmartha. I put my life on the line for you. I went to hell and back. You know what this bitch says after you save her? She tells you, go away, I'm busy. What? You don't learn anything about these characters. There's no real humor or gags beyond the opening cutscene. There's only really 2 cutscenes in the whole game. You don't learn anything about this world. The My Chemical Romance MTV video mod gives me more footage of these characters to work with than the actual game itself. If it sounds, excuse the pun, bare bones, that's because it is beyond the aesthetic. Give me something to sink my teeth into. Let me gnaw on Dead Guppy. I want to know these characters. I want to at least have an experience that somewhat resembles what the cover of the game evokes. Death Jr. really feels like a cobbled together proof of concept that got rushed to be an early PSP title, and that's kind of what happened. This game was initially meant to be a console title before being reworked on the PSP with the intention of standing out as a major early title. A big dead guppy in a small pond, so to speak. But the game didn't actually come out until August 2005, missing the window of the PSP's launch by 5 whole months. Now, I don't want anyone saying I hate Death Jr. or anything. In small bursts for a handheld game, I did have fun with it. I think it's cute, I love the premise, I'm just frustrated. Obviously, the developers had a lot working against them. They were working with brand new tech and were under the constraints of wanting to release a PSP launch title. Conceptually, I adore Death Jr. Using your scythe to swing and hover around as this cutesy character traversing a strange world with bizarre characters, I'm sold. I just kinda wish more had been done with it. This game almost kind of feels like one of those cartoon pilots that never air on TV, you know, before a series is fully fleshed out. So what ended up happening to little DJ? Well, the series actually got 2 annual follow-ups, Death Jr. 2, Root of Evil, and the Science Fair of Doom for Nintendo DS. That's right, little homie switched sides on us. I do plan to look at these ones further, but just to give you an idea here real quick, Root of Evil does address and remedy a lot of my issues with the first game. It's one of those sequels where everything just feels tighter and more polished. The characters actually get moments to be interactive characters. But if Death Jr. is considered a bit under the radar, I don't even know what to call the second one, because this is a game where its Wikipedia page is just sections of nothing. I never hear talk about these ones, and Death Jr. 2 is one of the more relatively uncommon PSP titles there is. But after those two games, the series kind of ended. No big multimedia franchise, DJ didn't become some beloved video game mascot, it just ended there. But at least Death Jr. got sequels, right? I can't say the same for our good old friend Freddy. Fred. If you want a funny, charming, horror comedy noir brawler chock full with adventure that's gone super under the radar all on the PSP, look no further than DHF, which also stands for Dope Halloween Fun Time. You play as Private Detective Fred, who's been resurrected as a linky brain in a jar as you attempt to bring down a town conspiracy and get justice for your own murder. Meeting a cast of wacky, nightmarish characters along the way as you try to pick up all the pieces and regain your memory, and potentially get back your own head.
I saved your brain, and your body is almost as good as it ever was. Better in some ways.
Yeah? But I'm a freak!
Yes.
Deadhead Fred almost feels like what happens when you take a little test tube nugget baby in a jar and let it sit and ferment and spring into a full-grown adult jarhead man. You've got this sprawling adventure over so many different locations as you continue your investigation, solving some light puzzles and platforming along the way. But the bulk of the game is the brawler combat, which at first feels a bit overly simple. You get this standard block, light and heavy attacks, and some finishing moves once you inflict enough damage. It can feel a tad stiff at first, but your attacks do feel punchy and impactful. Oddly enough, the jump button turns into your heavy attack once you first engage in combat, leading to some awkward moments where you might accidentally leap instead of doing more damage, but it didn't happen too often, it's just a strange choice. To prevent the combat from being too simplistic, you have a whole wheel of different heads to collect and switch to as the game progresses, all coming with different perks and powers. You got things like the Stonehead, which turns you into a big brawler that can smash through walls unless you traverse underwater. You got this gross zombie head, which you can fill with fluids and spray gasoline on enemies, lighting them on fire, or using water to put out fires. It's pretty neat. There's a Tiki head, which can manifest a decoy in combat and travel to this weird mirror dimension. Switching these heads is easily the most interesting and thoughtful gimmick of the gameplay. And combat-wise, they do add a good amount of variety. Each enemy type will unleash this enraged attack that prompts this finishing move counter that can only be performed by a specific head. So then the combat becomes this juggling of wearing heads that best handle each enemy type and situation. Also, each one you wear can perform special attacks which you can build up for some crowd control. It was fun seeing what each one would do. To me though, I find the heads are more interesting for what they can do beyond combat. Like the zombie one, you can fill with air until you're this disgusting floating megamind testicle mass to reach higher areas. I love this one. You got one head that shrinks you down for some little fella fun time platforming where you can mess with the inner workings of machinery. It's stuff like this that makes the head swapping gimmick so charming and fun. Exploring these new locations and meeting these new characters is really the game's strong point. So much detail went into bringing this world to life. The animations and performances, they're all so really well done. It's not something you really expect from a PSP game no one really plays. All the character designs are cartoonishly freakish. Even the folks that are supposed to be regular humans look like an absolute nightmare. Like, good God, look at her. Tell me, how am I supposed to compete with that? They did a wonderful job bringing the character of Deadhead Fred to life through his expressions and mannerisms, all with 2 eyeballs and a brain. And of course the fantastic voice work of John C. McGinley, who most of you may remember as Dr. Cox from Scrubs. He just perfectly plays that hyper-irritated wise ass with a heart of gold type role. Legendary actor John Polito also perfectly voices Ulysses Pitt, a crook tycoon crime boss responsible for Fred's death. His performance does a great job of making you want to do everything you can to bring down his dynasty. After being resurrected as a jarhead, Fred finds that pretty much everyone in his life just kind of fell apart without him. It's pretty tragic. And as you work your way, you find Fred is not just fighting for revenge or justice, he's fighting to get his old life back. With some distractions along the way, you got so many little side activities you can find. You got pool, pinball, fishing, hunting worms. And oh my god, can it be my wildest dreams come true? You have a PSP pie eating contest minigame complete with Stand By Me projectile vomit. And if that wasn't enough. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to present to you Pretty Small Pecker Cockfighting. That's right, you have mutant cockfights that you can bet on. Come on, Benny, hang in there. I got a whole 3 buckaroos on you.
I'll always be with you, Junko. No! Not Benny!
Deadhead Fred isn't like a perfect game or anything. There's some confusing backtracking and some obtuse puzzles that can feel a little unfair, but all of it's made up by the game's brilliant style and its wonderful performances. Not only was finishing the story off super satisfying, but even the end credits were hilarious.
If you want to be like me, you gotta start by dying, that's right. I'm telling you to drop dead. And I especially mean you, little shit who got me killed 15 times on level 6. Yeah, you know exactly who the you are.
Deadhead Fred even won the first ever Writers Guild Award for a video game, so what happened? A pretty good chunk of acclaim and some great ideas, celebrity voice cast, and this game still sold squat. Well, 2007 was an insanely packed year of releases, the PSP included. I know around this time the large majority of its marketing was centered around games like Renegade Squadron. Maybe a rated M game like Deadhead Fred with a sort of cartoonish look like this on a handheld probably wasn't the most appealing game during that time. Which is unfortunate because there are so many details and so much character and passion you can tell Deadhead Fred was made out of. It really does feel like it lives up to its premise in a way Death Jr. sadly wasn't able to. That being said, Death Jr. I still think is a decently fun game to revisit and an important part of the PSP's history, while Deadhead Fred, despite having a few rough edges, is still a game that is painfully overlooked even among people who adore the PSP. Most of you will never be able to truly taste and enjoy the glory of a succulent Wazoo bar, but it's not too late to enjoy these two.
Flaws and all, I think both these titles are a special part of the system's library, and what's truly haunting is how few have yet to play them. Thank you for joining me. Bye.